so excited to have a new guest for our open mic for Open Primaries podcast. The guest today is Erika Wright. And I met Erika through some of our outreach at Oklahoma United. She attended one of our events, and then maybe she attended another event. And then all of a sudden, we were face to face, and she was very enthusiastic. And her goal is to support open primaries, but in the service of education. Before I get into a question, I do want to make people aware of what you're doing and what you have organized with the Oklahoma Rural Schools Coalition, which is an education advocacy group with over 10,000 members. I think you told me like 18,000. How many members do you have?
Well, it's last I checked, it was getting closer to 18,000. So the 10,000 may have been pulled from a bio on something else. We're closer to 18,000. It fluctuates, but that's I think the last I checked where we were.
That is tremendous, tremendous effort to put together a group like this. How did that all start?
So we started this effort back in, I think it was the fall of about 2018. I was on school board here at Noble, and there was a bill that had come out of the Senate regarding school calendars and 4-day districts. And Noble was one of the biggest 4-day districts in the state. And as a school board member, I really just felt like it was kind of trampling on local control. And so it really just started with going up and starting to talk with legislators about one single bill. And then we realized really quickly we needed to have more voices than just Noble. And so we started to kind of get in touch with key players from some of these other small rural schools. And so we really coalesced around that one single bill. And then fast forward to the spring of 2020, we were getting close to the bill had passed, but long story short, there were some other updates in 2020, and then COVID hit. And so everything kind of fell apart. And I had a group of, maybe a couple of thousand people, 1,500 people. And I thought, I really can't walk away from what we've done. We've gathered all of these people that are like-minded and passionate about education. And one of the things in the gaps that I saw, there's a lot of really great groups out there doing public school advocacy work, but there wasn't really anybody doing front-facing organizing work for rural schools in particular. We have the Oklahoma, or it's called OROS, Oklahoma Rural Organization of Schools, which is an amazing group of folks, but that is more behind the scenes lobbying work with superintendents and administrators. And so I really felt like there was a gap, and, really about 85% of the policy, even 90% of the policy, that impacts rural schools is the same as everybody else, but rural schools do have a unique need sometimes, and things that maybe rural schools need that our larger schools may work against. And so anyway, we just decided in the fall of 2020 to rebrand the group to the Oklahoma Rural Schools Coalition, and it's just exploded from there. And this is a ship that we've built as we've gone along that all started with being ticked off about one bill.
I wonder how did you learn? How did you figure out how to put this together, the coalition? I know that you graduated from the Oklahoma Leadership Oklahoma, but I have a feeling there have been a lot of ways that you have built this network. And when you say you have over, close to 18,000 members and you have a lot of friends, apparently you have a lot of friends, like a lot.
Well, I don't know how many of those people are, my friends. Certainly I'm Facebook friends with a lot of them, but that Facebook world's not real world. But man, I honestly, I didn't go anywhere to learn this. I just, like I said, I was ticked off about a bill, and it's just kind of organically grown. I mean, we've made a lot of mistakes, and we've learned a lot of things along the way. And I think what has helped us in our growth is being really honest with ourselves and reflecting, maybe this worked, maybe this didn't work. But I think one of the things that we've done a really good job in just figuring out on our own, myself and kind of my key team that work behind the scenes to help me out. Um, I think we've been successful at building this movement because, first off, we've created a very respectful place for people to come in and maybe disagree with one another, but still do it in a respectful manner. Most of our, so we started as a Facebook group only, and most of our stuff still happens within the Facebook group. We've expanded our resources and we have other avenues to connect with people, but true to our roots, that's where we do most of our communication. And from the get-go, I don't know how we've done it, but we have a set of rules that are, basically keep it focused on Oklahoma education and rural schools in particular. We don't allow any, we don't propose and allow things to muddy the waters with national politics and what's going on at the White House. That's not part of what we do. And we really try our best to hold people accountable to being respectful. And for whatever reason, we all know how the vitriol is on social media. I don't know how we've been able to do it, but we really don't have much issue with people getting super nasty with one another. And so I think, to me, that was a really good baseline for our people to be able to get in and have discussions about policy and not feel like they have to be ugly to each other all the time, even if they disagree. And just listening to people, asking questions. We always ask our membership in the fall, what are the issues that are important to you? What do we need to be working on? And then we listen. And we speak their language and we know what they're looking for and what's important to them. And I think
there's no substitute for having walked that path, as a parent. And certainly as you served on the Board of Education, you've also been a trustee for the Oklahoma Foundation for Excellence.
Yeah.
You clearly, it from the ground up, which, you just intuitively, you've sat on all the bleachers just like I have.
Yeah.
And so when you have that, I think it's really important. I do want to say, we at Oklahoma United, preceding state question 836, we kind of did the same thing, but we are very objective oriented in our group. I founded Oklahoma United in order to come up with one thing that we could
Right.
do, that the people of Oklahoma might do as a first step to correcting a course correction, to bring civil discourse and focus onto the people like you, like me, like our neighbors, like everyone in the education system, all of the parents. We all have so much we agree on, but we're seeing a failure at the systemic level. So we also engaged in a lot of listening and
Sure.
going to the legislature and meeting some people. At one point, we were holding all these burger nights, and we had one where we had these giant plastic ears, like foam ears on a headband, like they're like this big, because we wanted to be good listeners, and we wanted our legislators to be good listeners too. So if you ever are in the mood for your future events, I will happily share the giant ears.
I would love to borrow your ears. I would love
Yeah,
something down
they're
here.
super fun. We like to have fun. We like to, have a good time while we're doing good things. And, we're trying to maintain a positive, constructive path. And
Yeah.
just like you do, I think that is something that we both have in common with our different organizations, right?
Hmm. And I think too, whether it's, what's going on with our elections, what's going on in public education, first of all, those two things are very married to one another. But I think, a lot of frustration for myself, I can speak for myself, and I would think this is a lot of people out there, is that it goes back to that listening. I've always approached being in a leadership role that especially a policy role, right? That if you're making up rules for people, laws or policies or whatever, you better ask them and then what they need and what they think about it or how it's going to impact them. And then you need to shut up and listen. Now, you may not agree and you may go a different direction, but I think that that's part of the issue for at least through education that I think public education supporters are really frustrated with is that whether it's the State Department of Education, but even our legislature, there's a lot of policy that goes through that's not driven by how it impacts the person on the receiving end. And a lot of that ties back to what your efforts are in electing good quality people that are there because they really want to serve their communities and the public. And we've lost that somewhere along the way.
There
And so
seems to
that's
be,
why I'm so excited about what you're doing.
thank you. There seems to be a really different perspective as a voter, as a parent, as a community member. I guess I thought that our state legislature was supposed to reflect our concerns and that the legislation should come from the, the needs of the people. But I have found recently, in my, as I unplugged from the matrix and realized what was going on, I have learned that apparently those who are elected, many of them feel the reverse. They feel that they were elected because they have superior knowledge and they have superior judgment to the rest of us. And therefore, they don't need to listen to us. They're just elected because they're going to do their thing, and we should all be grateful. And I'm not feeling very grateful right now because we have just been named 50th in the US in education. So I don't feel super grateful. It's not exactly top 10. And I think most of us would be happy with number 25, totally thrilled.
Absolutely.
Like, could we just be 25?
I mean, can we just move in a upward path? I mean, can we
Yeah. Yeah,
we
and
shoot
and
for the
you
moon and
you
hit
know
40
well,
at this point?
the issues with school funding here, the
Mhm.
funding, there's a complicated funding formula that seems to bear no relation to what our teachers really need to be paid or working lockers. We don't understand where the money's going, but we know that somebody needs to get to the bottom of it. And it is, if you were to ask every single person across the state of Oklahoma right now, if there's one thing in the state of Oklahoma that they feel like needs to be fixed, it's public education, right?
Amen. All
So
day, every day. That's what I hear. And,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
it is the thing.
it's,
So the question is, why have we not had leadership, political leadership, to make that one thing their priority and put all of the other stuff aside? Just literally dedicate full time to education, bring in all the best minds in our state. We have a ton of talent. Why are we not bringing them all to the table, like you said, and coming up with the right solution? Because you just think, you said, well, they should listen because they should listen, and that's the right thing to do, and that is true. But I think they should listen because they really don't want to screw up. I mean, like, if I'm trying to solve a problem, I actually want to get to a good solution that exceeds my own expertise. So I know that I don't know everything. I need to have everyone there because they're going to make me better. They're going to make the solution better. And
yeah.
so that's obviously what we're trying to do here.
And I mean, I think we do. I mean, I know our legislators get dogged a lot. We do have some great people up there that do have that desire. I think part of the problem is who are they listening to? And who are they intentionally bringing to the table, which really does tie back to the efforts of this state question. Because I can't tell you, so I mean, we can just pull the Band-Aid off for the elephant in the room of our state superintendent. I mean, I think right now that's kind of the center focus of all of us that are connected in public education in any way, whether you have grandkids, kids in school, you like him, you don't like him. That's a very polarizing situation right now. And that's a conversation that takes up most of my days. And I can tell you from my experience of talking with our elected officials at the Capitol, they are very frustrated as well. They're not happy with decisions that are being made or not being made. They're not happy with the person that's been charged with leading that agency. But, and there's the but, they don't want to be the ones to come out and push against him because they know who is putting them in their seats. And it's the voters, the Republican voters. You know, we know from all of your numbers that the vast majority of our elected officials are put into their seats before the end of the June primary. And a very small number of Oklahomans are even voting in that election. And so even though they understand that everybody's upset about this and we all want them to do something, they know that a ton of those everybody's are not the ones who are electing them to put them into office. And so they feel obligated, intimidated. I don't know what the war, I think it's probably different for all of them, but they're very hesitant to move on accountability and taking the reins of this issue that's going on. That is the house is burning down around us because they don't want to mess with the base of the primary Republican voters. And so to me, I was so thrilled when I saw this state question come out and what you guys are doing, because I had been thinking, we've done election guides for the last 3 election cycles, I think. And I had been thinking after the second election cycle we did it, I was like, you know, none of this matters. None of this policy matters. Like, if we really want to see good change for public education policy in this state, we've got to get people elected who support our schools and are brave enough to push back and do all those, or even gather and do all those things you were talking about. But we got to get people to vote in June, because if it doesn't matter how many people we register to vote to go vote in November, that's like showing up to the championship NBA game in the fourth quarter and thinking you're going to win. It doesn't happen that way. So I really think, in my opinion, and it's a very strong opinion, that until we see changes in our elections, we are not going to see positive movement in public education, because we do not have people in office as a majority. Not that there's not individuals, but we don't have a group of people in office that are courageous enough to push back against Superintendent Walters and that anti-public school crowd, because that anti-public school crowd are the people who are showing up to vote in those June Republican primaries. So by opening it up to everyone to have more say, where those candidates and those legislators have to answer to all people in their district, would be a huge step forward for public education.
We would like to see the person in charge of education to have to face all the voters with performance.
I cannot love that, and it's not possible for me to love that any more than I do right now, that statement. Yeah, because right now, like you said, we don't have accountability to everybody within a district, whether it's a legislative district or a statewide office, like the superintendent of public instruction. And that's problematic. And yeah, I love every single bit of that. I can't tell you how many times too, especially working with majority rural Oklahomans, that we hear. I mean, whether you hear people that say, I don't really feel like a Republican, but I have to register as a Republican if I even want to vote when it counts in my area. And so people can't authentically be who they are politically and have choices. And then, we hear a lot of times too that people who, we have maybe they're not Republican and they live in a rural area and they're like, they don't even show up because they don't have anyone to vote for. Maybe they'll show up in a presidential November election, but that they don't even have choices on their ballot unless they are registered with an R behind their name. And so, like you said, that I think ultimately the beauty of this whole true open primary system that you're talking about is the accountability. And also, from my perspective, as somebody who, we do these voter guides, and so we go through and spend hours and hours vetting candidates. And I really believe that this movement, this effort to open up accountability to everyone will also bring better candidates for the positions that are being elected. We try to recruit candidates all the time and they're like, why would I want to do this? It's gotten so polarized. It's gotten so nasty. It's gotten so awful. I don't want to subject my family to that. Or I would have to, run as something that maybe I feel like I'm more of an independent, but I'd have to run as a Republican. This gives some really good quality leaders within our communities around the states or around the state, an opportunity to enter these races in a more whole community atmosphere versus just this tiny little group of people that show up to vote in June. So I'm really excited to see how this will impact the quality of our candidates that are putting their names on the ballot as well.
Yeah, I found it was interesting, and a lot of people do that when we did our polling, rural communities actually have a higher favorability rate for the proposal, the state question proposal, than urban. I think I come back to, and this is something I'm very interested in how you view this. We have been fed some kind of mythology here in Oklahoma that there is a divide between our urban and smaller community populations. This mythology seems to serve conflict only. And if you're, if you're any kind of student of business and you understand duopolies and, the friction that creates revenue, and then you extrapolate from that to who is really pulling the strings here in Oklahoma, it's not the people, it's a small group of power brokers. It's not even the rank and file primary voters. Choices are being made in back rooms. Decisions are serving an industry and millions of dollars. And schools and education are a great example of, even if you had an unlimited lobbying budget to lobby for schools in general, not teachers, but just, proper funding and,
Right.
core curriculum, stuff like that, you would never have enough money to assure that you could have any kind of influence in legislative policies. I think we've gotten to the point in Oklahoma, we're just throwing money into a system, and then we watch our rankings fall and fall and fall, right? So how do people in rural Oklahoma view education and right now? And is it as hot an issue as I think it is?
Well, first of all, yes, it is probably a hotter issue than you think it is. And especially for, if we're speaking from a rural perspective, we have to keep in mind. So I've lived rural, I lived in Norman for 25 years. And, we have a lot of things in common, but there's a lot of things that are very, very different. When you live in a rural community and a small town, your public school, your brick and mortar public school is truly the heartbeat of that community and the economic base of that community. It's almost always the largest employer of a community. It's the central hub for all the social things, not just Friday night lights and sports, but I mean, people, in the school gym may be hosting, funeral services or whatever, like everything within a community culturally revolves around a healthy public school. And so, I think when you go on, you could pick any community in Oklahoma, any rural community in Oklahoma. And of course, within any community, you may have some division on certain things, but in general, people are supportive of their schools. And it doesn't really matter if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or whatever. Everyone's there for the FFA fundraiser. They're not checking your voter registration at the door. Everybody's all in supporting their schools. People are very frustrated, but a lot of them don't have good quality candidates to vote for, or they have no candidates to vote for because only one person applies for the job and gets it. And people just kind of give up.
Everybody's getting ready to go back to school
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
In mid-August. Some people are already back in, but there are just so many strong school organizations, and we definitely want to tap into all of that. I think that it's education is not unsolvable. It's just not. We can fix this, we can do it, but we've got to get some focus and leadership and better involvement from the ground up. And then we do have to make everyone accountable for the results. I think that's just such a key. So we're looking forward to open primaries to create that environment, and just wanting elected officials to take responsibility for what they have produced or failed to produce while taking our paychecks.
Right. Right. Well, I think this could be a huge step in transforming not just education, but all of the sectors that are struggling in Oklahoma. When it comes down to it, we can make all the noise we want at the Capitol as an organization with the legislators that are there. But until they are more accountable to more voters through something like this initiative that you guys are pushing, I don't see a lot of change happening. And that's why I love this again, because it comes back to the accountability. And I don't know who told me this one time, but it stuck with me that policymakers make decisions. There's 3 types of currency in politics: fear, money, and votes. I don't have money. You mentioned that. We could have all the money in the world. We're not going to be the anti-public school folks on that. We don't have to manufacture fear because everybody's got some fear going on right now as far as where we are in public education. But votes are the 3rd currency. And until, they can have people call up on the phone and yell at them or send them an email and ask them to do something. But if they know those people aren't the ones who are electing them, delete, they don't have to care. There's no accountability to that. So by changing who is really in the driver's seat of electing our officials, that is the first step to changing. And like you said, there's a whole heck of a lot of other states that are doing this. And guess who's ahead of us in education?
Everyone. Erika, I just want to thank you again
Thank
for
you.
your enthusiasm and your leadership. I mean, it's so impressive what you've built. And we just need to make sure that we, a rising tide lifts all boats. So
Yep.
I'm going to tie up to you and
Well, let's tie together.